Welcome to Key Conversations, a Making It in the Music Business podcast. My goal for this podcast is to help you learn from these conversations with both experts and working musicians and serve as a guide to assist your career in the process. I'm your host, Cheryl B. Englehart. Let's get going. Okay, so we are here today with Chris James, who, in my opinion, occurs to me as one of the most busy freelance composers, specifically for commercials out there. So he's got like a, kind of like this thing in the freelance commercial composer world. We bow down to Chris James. So I'm super psyched that you're here.
Well, thank you. That's very flattering.
You're blushing. I can see. Sorry.
I don't know. I try to stay busy. That's just one thing I try to do. So.
And you've been really busy. You had this super successful ad week, played this Reebok ad, which is kind of cool. So
yeah, a couple. I finished that a couple months ago. It's a Reebok ad ad week picked up. That was cool that they did that, and they talked a lot about it. They screwed my name up in the credits. But
how can you screw up Chris James?
I know. 2 first names. I actually have 3 first names, so it's even harder to screw up if you have the middle name. Anyway, it was fun to work on, though. It was kind of a hip hop thing. Had a vocalist that I outsourced through another freelancer who we both know, Ryan. I'm terrible with his last name, but Ryan Naish, I believe it's how you say it. Naush, maybe. Sorry, Ryan, but he lives in New Jersey, and he helped me with sourcing the vocalist for it. I didn't have the exact right guy here in Austin, where I work, and it worked out great. It was through South Music in Santa Monica, and it was a pretty cool one. It's on, or it will be on my reel very, very soon, as soon as I get the video from those guys.
Yeah, that's always what we're waiting for. So, and that's chrisjamesaudio.com, right, is where people can
that's right. Yep, cool. That's where the reel is and all the other info.
Awesome. So one question that I get a lot as a commercial freelance person is, how do you get started? There's the whole like chicken before the egg. You need a reel, but you can't get a reel until you've done some spots. How do you do some spots unless you have a reel? So how did it start for you? And what would you suggest for others?
So the overall for me starting out, I had a friend who was already doing it. I had a friend who was my roommate's brother, actually. He lived in New York, and he was already working at music house called Human, and they were pretty big at the time. They're still pretty big, but they'd been around for 4 or 5 years then. That was 2005, and he was like, hey, I was recording bands at the time. I wasn't really writing my own music. I barely really understood MIDI inside of inside the box there. I was still figuring all that out. A lot of the recording I was doing was using Pro Tools as like a tape recorder for bands, and mixing and figuring all that out.
Sure.
But he came down and saw my setup. I was starting to do some stuff on my own, dabble, and he was like, it seems like you have the equipment and the general knowledge. If you want to move up here and do an internship, with us, you're more than welcome. At the same time, I had a buddy named George who was living up there, getting his animation degree at Parsons, and he was just moving to Brooklyn and had a room open, and I was like, I'm going to do this, just see what happens. So I sold my car and put my first month's rent on credit card and basically just moved to Brooklyn and kind of made it happen. I was an intern there at Human, which was great. Got to learn all the ins and outs and all the backbone of the ad music industry, basically. So that when I was lucky, I didn't even know that really existed. I moved up there with a general knowledge of it from him.
Yep.
But learned very quickly, the different roles, the roles of the producer, the composer, obviously, sound design, and on up through a lot of the agency work. So if you can get an internship and you have, I was 24 or something at the time. If you can do that, that's a great way to start. But I realize that's not what you can do always. Not everybody has the access to that. So I recommend, and like you said, there's a catch-22 for sure. It's like, how can you show people a reel if you haven't ever gotten, any spots to even work on? I recommend just making a complete demo reel. Find ads in different spots you like on YouTube, rip them off of that, put demo everywhere on this, obviously, and just send it directly to people and have a note in there. Look, these aren't mine, but this is, a place to start. Basically, this is
Demonstration.
Right. Writing the video is important. I feel like it's hard to display your skills at this just sending people tracks. That's just my opinion. I mean,
Yeah, I've heard that too on panels and from people I work with, that just when you're pitching to someone who's a really visual person, usually the ad agencies are coming from a visual side of things. They're going to have a way harder time imagining what their product can look like on top of a track.
Exactly.
So I think the reel is important. I know that Vimeo has a Creative Commons license, like free videos, and it's also really easy to reach out to video creators there. So you could find videos that may not necessarily be ads, but just something that you can put your music to show that you can score.
Right. Also, reaching out to, just smaller filmmakers or people who make shorts or people or animators. That's another great thing. I love working to animation. We get it a decent amount in ad work, but it's something I've come to realize I really enjoy that, and you can explore a lot of different things there and go crazy.
Yeah. Animation is also really fun when they're working back and forth with you and you get to score it. I actually had a Ziploc ad that aired that was animated, and bags would show up and then apples would get put in the bags, and they wanted every little movement to be scored. So it was cool to be able to actually give them a track and then have the editor and the animator work back and forth, which you can't do when you are shooting a live person and then the actor goes home and
you can really tweak it. You can really tweak that animation just like you can music. So it was meant to be, but Vimeo, obviously another great resource, possibly better than YouTube in my opinion, but just writing the picture and showing people how you do that, and finding kind of your voice and composing, finding I would say what you're good at. Don't necessarily try to cast a broad net unless you think you can nail all of that stuff immedially,
Right.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. And I've definitely heard from people at music houses that they are looking for, you're going to be my go-to guy for what? They want to know who you're the person for. So now I'm the go-to person for light, poignant, piano, emotional, tampon commercials, Bounty, absorbent materials. I'm absorbent materials, diapers.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Okay, fine. Great.
Materials. No, it's funny. Yeah.
But yeah, if you're clear on what you want to be scoring and then put that in your reel. Yeah, that's cool. So another thought I would ask you, because I also got my tech chops in an internship. It was at a hip hop recording studio that I worked at, and then I ended up getting an assistantship at Bigfoot Music, which I was the assistant tech there. So I was able to really get my head around all the technology. And there's sort of two ways I always look at composing, musical composing, how well you write music and score a picture. Then there's all the production tech side of it. There's such a quick turnaround in terms of, we need this tomorrow. It's not like even if you are an amazing composer, but you write on pencil and paper and you go out and hire an orchestra, that's not a realistic way that we work. So how did you find the balance between being a composer and being a producer, really, or engineer person?
That's a good question. For me, I don't switch back and forth while I'm writing, really. I'm mixing as I go. And that's kind of how I learned and how I've always been. I'm mastering as I go too. I keep it all pretty, I don't do I don't really work linearly. I kind of try to get it all there in one way or another. My projects are pretty sloppy. You probably don't find that with a lot of people, but I kind of I like to go quickly. And if I need to come back later and address stuff, then I will.
Sure.
Good enough does exist, when you're working with the speed of demos and these 24-hour turnarounds, in my opinion. I could spend another hour or two working on something and it would get 2% better, but it's is someone going to necessarily even hear that under voiceover or sound design or both? And I know that if we need to tweak stuff, they'll like the track based on other things and not on these the minutia that you can just address later if they do grab onto the track. So I try to keep everything very, very fast and quick. So I guess the answer is that I don't delineate. I try to keep those as one thing, if at all possible. I like doing both of those things separately when I have more time, for sure, with like a band project or something. But yeah, I guess I kind of learned them. Well, I learned composing later. So mixing, I'm pretty fast at mixing because that's kind of what I knew before. But yeah, I try not to plan ahead too much. I like to kind of work spontaneously and just start writing and kind of go with what works. And hopefully I have enough time to make it rad enough.
That's awesome. I freaking love that you just said there is such a thing as good enough, because I find so many musicians are like stuck in the, it's not perfect yet, but which I think is just a fear of putting it out there and fear of rejection and a fear, some fears, but like it's good enough is such a, it's so powerful to just like send it and go. And then you have so much more time to like do other things and where.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. Just,
I was just going to say, it's hard for me to say that, because there were times in my life when I was, and I feel like I am a perfectionist in some things, but yeah, for instance, my artist project, Dark that I do with Genevieve Vincent, we take our time, and it's really nerve-wracking. We argue back and forth over one word and lyrics, because we write across the country from each other and work together that way, and that we take a lot more time. And the kind of juxtaposition between that and writing a track for Toyota in an hour and a half, it's a completely different feeling. I feel like one is work and one is definitely more work and one is definitely more art. And I although I try to take my time with every ad I'm doing. It's just there's only so much time, and you can only get it so finished. So
sure. Yeah, I get that. No, I totally get that. So specifically, before we step away from the engineering conversation, what DAW are you using? What are the tools that you rely on most heavily? Like, give us some of the like nitty gritties of what a person like you uses.
Pro Tools. I'm on a Mac for sure. Right now I'm on an iMac because I don't feel the need to have any more power than that. I don't do super orchestral heavy stuff, and even if I did, I feel like this could probably handle it. I'm looking over because it's over here. I use Pro Tools. I have a Pro Tools HD setup that I've had for a few years. Heavily considering getting more into the UAD, the UA plugin market. A lot of our composer buddies use it, but I'm getting there. I'm probably going to do that with my next upgrade. But I have a lot of outboard synth stuff here. I don't know. Am I allowed to turn my computer? I can turn my computer and show you a little bit of the studio here without making anybody dizzy. I have my synth wall over here.
Wow, that's pretty.
Stuff. It's not very neat right now. I'm working, so my apologies. But I have a number of outboard synths that I use. Some on ads, with this ad speed stuff, I have to, work in the box a lot. There's the desk and the computer. Hopefully you can see it. And then I have like my guitars and my giant window that I like. So here, I'm making the full circle. Here we go.
And we're back. Awesome.
So,
sweet.
Like I was saying, for ad stuff, a lot of in the box just because of revisions and a lot of soft synths and stuff. I try to use one outboard thing for each track if I can, if I have time, but it doesn't always happen. And it's the end product.
Cool.
Matters, in my opinion, not how you do it necessarily. So.
Yeah, totally. No, that's awesome. I got into the UA stuff when I changed up my interface to be Apollo. And then all the stuff that comes with it, I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. Let's play.
Make a big jump if I'm going to do that, but yeah, I might say.
So what's your favorite kind of call to get when you get a call or email for a job? What is the absolute best? Is it something that has to do with your songwriting artist, or is it what kind of commercial? What's the best way you could be working?
I like it when they're general and they ask me to just do something cool, and if it's like, hopefully, I know that's not very specific, but when they trust me, I like that, and they let me just kind of do my thing. It's not too honed in. Having one reference can kind of suck, just because you're like, how close should I get is always a thing, and how but also when they give you 10, it can also suck just because, I don't know. I'd rather them trust me and like let me pull some of the references. It doesn't happen too often, but that it's that wide open. But I do like those. I like being able to, and that's when I get to. Hopefully, I have enough time. That's another thing. I would love it when I don't just have one day.
Right.
If they're like, look, we actually planned ahead, and you can, mess around with sounds and not just like, slam it down real quick. I like that. I get to use some of the outboard stuff.
Cool. Yeah, it's like they're always surprised they need music.
Right.
Like,
I didn't think about this.
Huh. Okay.
And it's funny because I'm sure you've seen videos where it's like they show the contrast of a great sound with shitty visuals, and it works pretty well. But shitty sound and great visuals doesn't work nearly as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like people have seen videos and examples of that, and they forget it. Especially. Often, I guess, people in that industry. I don't know. It seems like we're always last minute. We're always the last.
Yeah.
Last thing.
And are you still working? We sort of bring it back to your story. Do you still work as a freelancer with music houses, or are you doing a little bit more direct jobs, meaning a client calls you directly, like the product or the customer? How are how's that broken up in terms of what's most of your work?
Both. Most of it is music house work still. Just get that pretty regularly, and they're kind of my reps. I kind of look at it like that. The good ones, at least, they send me jobs, and I don't have to mess with it. So that's a good bread and butter thing to have. But I've been working on reaching out more directly, and I've been doing more direct work. Definitely the last few years. I've been trying to do that more in Austin, actually, because there have been more and more smaller and mid-level agencies here, and brands too. There are a lot of brands. I mean, that's something I'm interested in, working more directly with brands on just real direct stuff. Just a few people working on it. I feel like you have the most creative freedom, and you're able to do really cool stuff and push it through very quickly. I like that. And even if the money isn't quite as good, it's still kind of more fun. You get to be more than just a composer, in a way. I went to
strategizing a little bit with that.
Yeah. I mean, I went to school for film at University of Texas here, but I also studied a bunch of advertising. I almost did advertising. So I'm really interested in all of that and campaign development and being even more behind the scenes. I'm really interested in, I always ask, what's the demographic of this if I don't know it? Because that helps me write a lot. I'm like, you say you want something that's cool, but like cool from whose point of view? Like, is it a 48-year-old person or
for an AARP ad?
Right. We want it to be cool and hip, and I'm like, well, who? And also, who are you? Like, that's my other thing is, who is the person writing these notes on the agency side? Like, how old are they? Like, is this a young new guy or new person who knows all these new bands, or is it someone who's wants the, like, how Stella Got Her Groove Back soundtrack? Like,
yeah. So we're talking about this like it is common sense to us, but the way when we're talking about brands versus agencies versus music houses, essentially the brand, like Coca-Cola, will call an ad agency to create a commercial. The ad agency will then call their film people and their music people. Their music people usually are music houses, who then either have their own composers and or a combination of their own composers plus calling out to freelancers, which is where Chris and I live.
Exactly.
So when we talk about going, so that's like a little pyramid of hierarchy. So when we talk about going direct, sometimes that means skipping the music house, going direct to an agency. But now we're really talking about, okay, what if we went direct to the brands? And I've done some smaller brands. A lot of brands are figuring out the video is key now and are doing YouTube channels and info videos on their websites. So even those kinds of jobs can be lucrative and direct with the brand and more, like Chris was saying, more easier to work with. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that in case we were talking around in circles.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you clarified that nicely. Brand, agency, music house, or vendor, if you want to call them what they really are. They're vendors to agencies. The same with animation houses, etc., other post houses, and then the freelancers at the bottom who get paid last.
Last and least. It's great.
Yeah.
So you were interning at Human.
Mm-hmm.
Then what? I should have started with this, but
I worked there 3 years. I was an intern. I moved into what they call the dub room, which is like a production assistant, which is where you really learn, and it's difficult and it's hard hours, and but you really are in the trenches and you learn all that stuff. You get to hear. I really liked it, and I didn't realize it until later, the advantage of that, because I got to hear every track that passed through there, and I got to hear every track that was picked or that won for years. So I feel like that's a very fast way to learn. Of course, being alongside some really fantastic composers over there, Morgan Descani, Sloan Alexander, Andy Block, all those guys. There were tons. I could keep going. Mike McAllister, a bunch of good guys at the time. But from there, right, I moved into a kind of a freelance composer position because I decided I wanted to become a composer and not be a producer there. They kind of were thinking I could do that and do some sound design also. But I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. They kept giving me regular work, which was great, while I was starting out freelancing. So I was able to have a bit of a safety blanket while I reached out to other music houses. And I did. I sent my reel out to a bunch of people. I luckily had a few spots that I'd won, and I was able to put demo on the others, and Human was cool with that. And just kind of built that up. Decided to move back to Austin after being in New York for 4 years, and just worked at home for a bit. And it was all kind of building up slowly from there, although there was 2009 was in there, and all the there was a dip in work for a lot of people, and that was kind of right when I moved to Austin. Luckily, there had a few people had branched out from Human and started their own music houses, and I started working with them more. Also, Future Perfect, and they're in Santa Monica and South. And as the story continues, basically, I kept working in Austin for a couple years, and then South wanted me to work in-house for them. So I moved out to Santa Monica and was a senior composer there and did some creative directing. And then we parted ways about a year and a half into that. Moved back to Austin. Sorry, stay with me. I'm almost done with the timeline.
I love it.
Moved back to Austin. And that was about 5 years ago. And I've been here ever since. I moved into this, my new studio that I kind of helped build, here on the east side of Austin a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago. And I love it. Love
Awesome.
being here. I have a little live room now and a vocal booth, and I dig it.
So cool. Thank you. That was a complete story. We did like a little
sorry, talking off.
Reflection. No. I should have asked this complete story first. We just sort of dug in. I just wanted to like get all the things. I feel like we're gonna have to do a part 2 at some point. There's so much more stuff to dig into, and you're such a resource. So thank you for doing this. Any like last parting words to? I feel like the big question is how do you get your foot in the door? We already said internships, but I keep saying that too. And like, it's a people person, like take people out, like go show up at people's studios.
Right.
But what do you got?
Up in person is good, especially if you're in New York or LA, because it almost helps to not be there because they're like, oh, that's the guy or the girl from Detroit, or you know what I'm saying, or wherever.
Yeah.
But if you're in LA or New York, go set up a meeting to go in and talk to them and have them show you around. They'll remember you more. Look up music house lists of music houses. Go on. I mean, they're not hard to find. You can find
Google.
them.
I've heard of this site Google that could give you some of these.
You could do that. Probably a good place to start, Google. And they have submission places, and just keep following up. Don't get discouraged. Keep writing new music. Keep working to picture and kind of figuring out your sound, and get fast. Because when they do call you, the last thing you want to do is mess up the first one and either not deliver what they want or not be able to deliver because of the timeline, so be ready for that. Learn. I would say there are a couple other things I would say as you get going, like really learn the ins and outs of kind of the publishing side. It's important. Oh no, my internet connection is it says. Oh no, hopefully it's better.
I see you. You're good.
Okay, good. Figure out what PRO company or whatever works best for you and go with them. If it's ASCAP, if it's BMI, if it's whoever, and find someone there that you can talk to by name, or a company that will help you in the middle figure all that out. Also, as you get going, I know this is down the line, but it's super, super important to find a good accountant. I know that sounds, I don't know, you guys, musicians don't talk about that all the time, and it's not something they think about. They just want to get the money, but it's like, you have to like have those finances and the kind of the backbone set up. Otherwise it's gonna bite you in the ass big time. And then thirdly, really do a good job of keeping track of your library, your tracks you've written, and make sure that you're not giving them to people who are going to exploit them or take advantage in any way. Hold on to them. Like, that's your asset. Don't let anybody own them unless it's an absolute deal breaker, in my opinion. The one thing you have as a freelancer or as a composer who's not working just for one place is that you, in theory, should be able to keep all of the music that you've written, even if nobody takes it or buys it in demo form. Those are all yours, and those are your assets. And I have thousands of tracks, and they make me money all the time because I still own them. So hold on to them and organize them so you can search them quickly. Sorry to keep packing stuff on, but that's very important also.
Oh my God, no, it's so good.
Cool.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your crazy busy day and for doing this. So chrisjamesaudio.com. You can go get jealous of this guy's career, everybody. And thank you.
Thank you. All right. Talk to you soon. All right.
Okay.
Please don't forget to rate, like, and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and YouTube if you like this podcast. Musicians like you keep me inspired and motivated, and for doing that, I'm offering you a free 6-page guide to pitching. This guide will unlock the keys to priming your pitch, where you can get started getting a yes when you pitch anything to anyone. Grab it at inthekey.co/prime. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Key Conversations. The theme song on this podcast was provided by yours truly. If you're interested to find out more about my composing and songwriting projects, go to inthekey.co/Cheryl. If you're a musician looking to get some real results for your music career, then head to inthekey.co/results, where I've created a bunch of different kinds of resources just for you. Key Conversations is sponsored in part by Bandzoogle. They make it easy to build a beautiful website for your music. Their step-by-step system gets you online in minutes, and you can choose from hundreds of mobile-friendly themes and customize them with their point-and-click editor. All of the features you can imagine for a possible website are built in. So, because you're a Key Conversations podcast listener, you get a special month free trial plus 15% off if you do decide to sign up. Just for you. Go to inthekey.co/make-a-site to get the offer. Pretty sure that you're the